Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. Just know that we can't do the program without you listening every single day. And the phone number, if you want to call us or text us, 870-275-9799. Joining us now, I want to welcome to the program. We have Dr. Anita Wells is with us. Anita, welcome to the Paul Harrell program.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm really glad that you could make it, and I apologize for the circumstances. Our listening audience, our viewers, more importantly, our viewers. Normally, I'm in the room where you are, but because I'm producerless most of this week, I have been. And anyway, so we're kind of doing this split screen thing for you. So you are the first congressional district chair of the Republican Party of Arkansas.
That's right. It has 29 counties.
Wow, that's a lot. I'm seeing them here. I mean, they really, it's just, you got a lot of Delta. You go, and that's Baxter too, right? It goes all the way to Baxter.
That's right. There's a lot in the northern part of Arkansas, and then it goes all the way down to the very bottom of Arkansas.
Okay.
Chico County.
Yeah.
Lake Village, Eudora.
And how do you see? And I talked to the chairman of the Deshay County. I think I'm pronouncing that
Sarah
right.
Dunkling.
Sarah Dunkling. Yeah. Dunklin. Yeah, I talked to her. She came on the program for our Young or Conservative Future segment, and so she was nice to talk to. But I don't ever know if I'm pronouncing the name of that county right. You know, so
Deshay.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So tell us. Let's first of all talk Dr. Anita Wells. So what do you do? Aside from being the chair of not only the first congressional district of the RPA, but also of the Greene County Republican Committee.
Right. I'm also the chair of the Greene County Republican Committee. Mm-hmm. So I was elected to that office in January of this year. And then March I was elected to the first congressional district, Republican Party of Arkansas, the chair for that. And so I wear a lot of hats, and I know that's a cliche, but it's really true.
I was talking to you before the show and talking to you during the break and here. Yes, certainly you do. So what do you do outside of that, and then kind of tell how you got into this?
Okay. Well, I'm a psychologist, and I'm also an X-ray tech, and so I know that those are very different professions, and however that's another story maybe how I got into both of those. So the psychologist, I graduated in 2008, but then I was a X-ray tech, and I say in my first life, from 1980 to 1990, I worked at Arkansas Methodist Hospital in Paragould, those 10 years full time. Then I went back to school. Well, I stayed home with the kids 10 years and went back to school and worked on a psychology degree. And then in 2000, I started back part-time at the hospital while I worked on my psychology degree, graduated in 2008. 2009 is when I became very active in the Republican group. And
in 2009?
2009.
Yeah, so Barack Obama's recently elected, and things are like, really going towards Karl Marx philosophy hard. It's a hard left turn.
Yes. Well, let me tell you this, Paul. I always thought that growing up that I would work my 40 years and sit on the front porch in a rocking chair, that white rocking chair that people talk about, and that's what I thought life was. And now I realize that if we always want to stand up for our values, however, I think it's important for people to step out. And so we've got to step out off that porch, and we've got to get busy and do the work for the people of the United States, because I love that saying, we were circling the drain. And I love that saying. And we have to step out and get busy, or we're going to lose our country that we so loved.
Yeah. So when you go, to these counties in the first district, in the first congressional district, you're the chair of the RPA there. So from Stone County to Baxter County to Fulton County, Randolph, Clay, all the way down to Arkansas, Jefferson, Lincoln, Deshay, Phillips. I mean, what's the mood in these county committees, and just in general? I mean, do you recognize a consistent mood?
We really do, and So 2 years ago, I was elected to second vice chair of the 1st Congressional District, and I worked with Tommy Land. He was chair at the time, and we drove all the way down. We started driving all these counties and meeting people and networking in those counties. They didn't have active committees down there, I'd say below Interstate 40 in those counties. And so we met with people in Chico, DeShay, Phillips, Arkansas, Lee, Monroe, St. Francis, and in those Delta areas, and they didn't have, many of them didn't even have committees going at that time. And so like Sarah, the girl that you were talking about, she started that committee in DeShay County, and that was just 2 years ago, and now they have had to ask for a variance with the state party to have more members because they could not, by party rule, they didn't have that many members. And so they, is it getting close to 100 or something? You know, they have a lot of people that are wanting to get involved. The same way with Chico County. They had no Republicans elected to office there, and then they started a committee there after we went down and visited with them, and now they had a Lincoln Day dinner of over 200 people there, and now they have a very active committee. Okay. And just recently, they had no Republican officials there, and because of a death of a JP in that area, well then they had a person apply to the governor to be appointed for that JP position, and he was appointed. So I'm sure that a Democrat was applied for that position too. Yeah, yeah. So things are changing down in the Delta.
And that's very interesting. And the thing is, you know, you got involved in 2009. So you've seen Arkansas really change from Northeast Arkansas, especially. I mean, that has to be talked about there. And our friends who are listening in, you know, the River Valley and in Northwest Arkansas as well. This next question, it really affects everybody in the state because, from my perspective, we've seen a lot of Republicans, okay, that are now in office and in positions of power, but not the reduction in government that many of them campaign on, and so. How are we supposed to tell the difference? I mean, first of all, do people in these county committees recognize that just because you have an R next to your name doesn't mean that you're actually going to implement these policies?
Well, you know, there's a spectrum of people's their values on the Republican side and also the Democrat side. You know, you have your conservative Democrats, and then you have your very, very liberal. And we can see that in Nancy Pelosi and then some other people who are more conservative on the Democrat side. So on the Republican side, you have the same thing. And so people who change from Democrat to Republican, we don't really know on the spectrum where they lie. So that's to be determined.
Yeah, that's true. Because you look at some of these guys' voting records that have changed from being a Democrat to a Republican, and there's hardly any difference. You know, and so I mean, at least you know, if you go look at their voting record, and that's frustrating to me. So it makes me wonder. Were you familiar at all with the rule changes that happened to the platform? Specifically talking about committees and the recommendation of saying, hey, look, if you have this majority here, Republicans control, let's say, the House down in Little Rock, then all of your committee chairmen need to be Republicans. I mean, you're familiar with that part of it?
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
That was a big change, and I really applauded, you know, that was adopted. And then, of course, that's when you started to see one in particular, State Representative Joe Jett, who was already a Democrat and a chair. He was like, well, I'm now a Republican, you know, and he retained his chairmanship. So I felt like that was certainly an interesting piece of information.
Yes. Well, something similar to that is when our representatives or senators are in Little Rock voting, well, then a lot of times they measure how they should vote by how many phone calls they get. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have a party platform that has our values and what we believe and our principles. And so it's odd that we still have to call and tell them what our platform is and to remind them of that. And so when they say that, well, more Democrats or more liberals called me, I had to vote the other way. So that surprises me because I think, well, we have a platform. You should know that platform.
So the people in the county committees are that you. I mean, would you say, hey, look, they really want. I mean, Republican state reps and state senators, they go down there. It's a stressful environment, yes, but they kind of, then they're like, oh well, maybe a tax increase isn't that bad of an idea. But the folks back home, you think they're pretty solid? Like, no, it's not a good idea. I mean, is that? I don't want to ask you to generalize too much, but what's the mood?
Well, the conservative base, want lower taxes, and so they don't want them to go and be swayed and persuaded to vote the other way, and we elect that person to go and vote those values for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really good. Okay, so we're talking, by the way, if you're just joining us today on this Johnny Cash Friday, we do really appreciate it. We're talking with the 1st Congressional District Republican Party of Arkansas Chair, Dr. Anita Wells. So you are, you say you're an X-ray technician.
I am.
So you wear all of the clothes.
Yes, I had to take off my scrubs to change.
Oh, you do? Okay.
To what I wore here today, yes.
Okay, and a psychologist.
Yes, and a
psychologist. All right,
so
so here's the thing, and forgive me for being totally naive, and maybe you get this a lot, but so as a psychologist, do people feel like that you're analyzing them? Is that like when you say I'm a psychologist?
Yes, it happens a lot.
Do you think that people get do they get nervous? Like, do they well, if you've just met them, you don't know if they're acting different. But you know what I mean? See, because in my mind, I feel that way. Like, I'm like, oh, she's a psychologist, so she, she knows everything about me, and kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Sherlock Holmes, but just being able to deduct, and come to a conclusion.
I hear that a lot, so have you analyzed me yet? And, I just say yes.
Oh, that's great. So is it a thing, though? Is it something you can't really turn off? It's
who I am.
It's
yes.
who you are now.
Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. Okay. All right, so there you go, folks. It is true.
I don't have to share my opinions with everyone, though.
No, you don't. No, you don't, because no one's paying you for that. that actually might come across as rude. So that's very, very good. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Anita Wells, and it's good to meet you and kind of get the feeling for, just how things are in this county and everything else. Let's kind of we're kind of got to move on here in a minute, but I do want to ask one more question. So there aren't the county in many of these Delta counties. There weren't Republican committees, right?
That's right.
So now you have people who I'm assuming in these counties running for county office.
People are stepping out.
Okay.
Yes.
Getting off the porch.
That's right.
And that's really, really good. So, in your opinion, because I know that you're conservative, is it hard to determine, are you really a conservative, or are you just running in a party that is now popular and it's the only way to really realistically have a chance of getting elected?
And sometimes you can talk to neighbors and people that live around them, have known them forever, and they can say, he's not a conservative, and never has been. And so you hear that. And so that's the whole purpose of networking and knowing people in the area. And you can deduct from that.
Okay, so, and I've thought that too. Especially if we're talking about somebody who is older, and been in the community a while. A lot of people are going to already know. Hey, that's the biggest Democrat in Arkansas. I mean, that's the biggest liberal progressive in Arkansas.
Right, and Paul, and I want you to remember that we had this conversation today because you're going to see a lot of change in the Delta. In those lower counties, you're going to see people elected, and because a lot of times I talk to some of those people and they say, it'll never change here, it will never. And I tell them the same thing. I say, you remember we had this conversation. Because I think it was in 2012 in Greene County, I had a friend, I told him, I said, we're going to turn Greene County red. And he said, it will never happen. And I told him that very day. I said, you remember we had this conversation. And so it's worked for me before, and I think it's going to work in the Delta.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. The move towards the right. And hopefully, and with that comes accountability once you get in office. And I think that's what primaries are for, and we'll kind of see how that all shakes out. Who's going to announce what. I'm sure there's going to be, well, there already are some across the state. We all obviously know that. Dr. Anita Wells, appreciate it. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
All righty. Folks, it's Johnny Cash Friday, and I'm excited because we've got more music to get to. This is one of my favorites here, Ghost Riders in the Sky. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.